That was the Attorney General of the United States, and that was Jeff Sessions commenting with Maria Bartiromo on Fox Business Network as he goes into some detail. Now, here's where we are. I mean, it still comes down to this. Number one, we know Hillary rigged a primary. Number two, we know that she wanted outside influence. She paid a former NI6 spy, a British national, to go get information from Russia so she could lie to the American people in an election, because we now know that information, much of which has been proven false. And then, of course, that becomes the bulk of information for a FISA warrant against an opposition party candidate in an election year. And the only reason she got to even stay is because, well, we know people like Comey and Peter Strzok and others, well, they exonerated Hillary. It was never a real investigation into her email server scandal. When we get a hold of this IG report next month, it's going to be very revealing. Anyway, Patrick J. Buchanan has been around the block a few times. He was in the Nixon administration. Did you ever see anything this crazy unfolding in this country like this?
In the Nixon administration?
Anywhere, anytime, any place, anywhere.
Well, no, this is remarkable. I mean, when you get right down to it, the Watergate thing was about a third-rate burglary, which was lied about to cover it up for the election. But what you've got here is remarkable. People are talking about this troll farm or troll factory of these kids over in Russia who are fooling around in the American election or in various issues and taking sides against Hillary, for Trump, Jill Stein. But what do we have, what you just mentioned, Sean? You've got British intelligence, top-ranked guy at MI6, talking to Russian intelligence agents, past or present, and their information comes to D.C. It's financed by the Hillary Clinton campaign, and they send it all over to the FBI, and it's dirt on Trump, alleged dirt on Trump, and it's used to get an FISA warrant to wiretap and survey the Trump campaign. Now, this is very serious foreign penetration by foreign intelligence units, past or present, in order to alter the outcome of a presidential campaign by destroying and damaging and destroying one of the candidates. Now, is that more serious than this troll farm, which Russian reporters were writing about last year twice?
Well, if you read Byron York's piece in the Washington Examiner, I thought it was great this weekend. The Russian massive attack on U.S. elections spent less than $3,200 in key battleground states, which I guess I could only assume is why Rod Rosenstein said it had no impact on the election. Now, if you look at the sum, when you round out the money in the race with Clinton and Trump, their campaign spent a total combined $2.4 billion. So if we're looking at $3,200 in key battleground states, which are the states that matter, doesn't sound all that influential to me. When you're dealing with 90 particular people in spite of their budget, which, by the way, was worldwide. It wasn't just for the United States, of about $1.2 million a month. And they had started this in 2014, before Trump ever announced.
You know, this is what gets me is that you're exactly right in terms of the relative size and what they were doing. As a matter of fact, if these guys, they're Russian citizens taking American identities. If they were American citizens, there's not a thing they've been said to have done, including that float with a cage on it and a woman in it and an orange jumpsuit in a cage saying with "lock her up" written on it. I mean, if that's all they're up to, it would have been normal politics in an American election. Now, they shouldn't be doing it, but I agree with you on the relative size of this thing and the relative gravity of what the Hillary Clinton did, the campaign did, in colluding with the Russians and the Brits and the FBI. Now, this is big stuff. Well, and I wonder, is Mueller dealing with this? Because there is clearly evidence of Russian collusion in the campaign to destroy one of the candidates.
How can you trust?
That's what Mueller is supposed to be looking at.
He is. Okay, there's two aspects of it. One, if the Russians did try to influence, we got that report. But I think I look at Mueller's appointments, people like we were just discussing in the last hour with Sarah Carter, her blockbuster piece on Andrew Weissman. I mean, here's a guy, Pat, that literally put tens of thousands of people out of work needlessly because he was overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court 9-0. and tens of thousands of Anderson accounting employees lost their jobs. 4 Merrill executives, they went to jail for a year. He withheld exculpatory evidence in 2 cases, and in that case with the Merrill executives, that was overturned by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. You got all these Obama, Hillary, DNC donors, but you don't have any Trump donors. I think when Trump says a witch hunt, of the 20-some-odd people that he appoints to the special counsel, he can't find one conservative? Not one conservative?
This is a Trump hunt. This is a Trump hunt. And from the beginning, the whole thing is this whole machine is designed to bring down Trump. Now let's talk about the troll farm or the troll factory. Nadler, the Democratic congressman from New York, who I believe would be chairman of any impeachment committee, he compares it to Pearl Harbor, the attack on the American fleet at Pearl Harbor.
Oh, good grief.
And that shows you the quasi-hysteria in this town, and one of the reasons there is increasing hysteria is the fear that the country is starting to turn and look at the investigators and look at the Hillary campaign and looking at all the rest of this stuff, which appears to me to have far more gravity than anything coming out of the Mueller thing. After 18 months, they've got some young Russian trolls making a few bucks, writing emails and things like that and tweets in the American campaign.
Well, wait a minute. And this is something I think you have complained, rightly so, about in many instances, about U.S. interventionism in other countries. I mean, we can sit here all sanctimoniously and act like America doesn't do this, but we know during the 2015 elections, John Kerry, the Obama administration, they funneled even taxpayer money to a group in Israel to defeat Prime Minister Netanyahu. We know when Hosni Mubarak was literally hanging on a ledge there. We know that there was intervention by the U.S. and Mohammed Morsi was elected president. Remember, Obama's State Department gave political training to Morsi's guys. Morsi, once he appeared to win in what was a rigged election, Obama poured $1.5 billion in foreign aid into, one of the former leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood. So I'm sorry.
Sean, then he was overthrown.
Yes.
And the 50,000 Muslim Brotherhood guys, he was a democratically elected president, but 50,000 Muslim Brotherhood guys, I think, have been locked up. But take the Ukraine, my good friend John McCain, Victoria Nuland of the State Department. They're over there in Maidan Square. Now, the guy in Kiev was pro-Russian, but he was democratically elected. He was overthrown in a coup we supported. And then Miss Victoria Nuland was over there discussing the new government before the president had fled.
Well, what was Hillary Clinton doing in 2011 with Muammar Gaddafi in Libya? Weren't we interfering politically? Weren't we interfering militarily as well? Orchestrating.
Listen, Sean, I go back in 53, we dumped over the government in Iran. In 54, it was in Guatemala. I think our guys might have been fooling around in the Congo when Patrice Lumumba met his fate.
Macedonia?
We didn't do it. We didn't do it in Chile. But when General Pinochet overthrew that regime down there of the friend of Fidel Castro, I mean, we applauded and cheered it. And look, Americans, we're in the real world here. Americans intervene in the internal affairs of foreign countries. The National Endowment for Democracy is designed to promote democracy over other forms of government. They were cheering themselves when the color-coded revolutions, working in Serbia, working in Ukraine, working in Georgia. I mean, the idea that everybody's on a high horse, they're interfering in our election. I mean, this is turnabout.
Well, look, we'd be naive, and this goes back to the Cold War. This goes back even further than that, and I think you're right. So what is the natural point here? Because I agree with you about Mueller. I want to stay focused on him for a minute here, because I look at the team that he has assembled. I look at the biases that they have. How do you appoint as the New York Times described Andrew Weissman as Mueller's pit bull. How do you appoint a guy that lost 9-0, overturned in the Supreme Court 9-0, tens of thousands lose their job, 4 innocent people spend a year in jail, that's overturned Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. On 2 separate occasions, he's excoriated by judges for withholding exculpatory evidence. Why is he even on this special counsel? How does Mueller justify that?
Well, the point is, just what you've described is why. he's on the special counsel's operation. He is a pit bull. He's going to come after Trump, and they're not going to stop, in my judgment, given the bias and given the edge they have and the resolve they have, to take down Trump. I mean, this is what Mr. Mueller, and picking him, who's a well-known individual, knows what he's getting and knows who this guy is and knows what his talents are and knows what his drawbacks are, and he hires him. I think that tells you where Mr. Mueller is headed if he can get there. But here we've got 18 months, and Mr. Trump is supposed to have colluded with Putin to hack the DNC and hack John Podesta. And where is the evidence?
There is no evidence.
There's
only one person that knows the truth about that. I've interviewed him 5 times, radio and TV, Pat, and that's the guy that put it out, and that's Julian Assange, and they won't talk to him.
Right. Well, look, they've had 18 months. I mean, if you can't find the smoking gun in 18 months between Putin and Trump, maybe there isn't one. But when this stuff started, a lot of it in the late 40s, you know who was the bag man for the CIA taking all those monies over to the Democrats, socialists, and others to stop the communists in France and Italy? Tom Brayton of Buchanan and Brayton.
Wow. That brings back history.
He was in the CIA. He was doing the Lord's work.
Oh, my gosh. All right, stay right there. Pat Buchanan, 800-941-SEAN, toll-free telephone number. As we continue, Patrick J. Buchanan is with us. You look at the 13 Russian nationals mentioned in this indictment. They're never going to be indicted, number one. But what did we learn? It had nothing to do with Trump or the Trump campaign or any allegations of collusion. No Americans had any knowledge of what the Russians were doing. Russians masquerading as Americans, deceiving everyone with whom they had contact. And a president now, this has gone on for over a year. He's getting frustrated. And frankly, I think the country at this point should get frustrated, Pat Buchanan, because after a year, there's never been any evidence of collusion presented to anybody.
This really is an injustice being done. Justice delayed is justice denied. And for 18 months, Trump has been under this cloud, and I can understand his rage and exasperation. They had nothing to do with the hacking of those emails, taking the material and giving it to Julian Assange and getting it published. And this justice denied thing, this cloud, has hung over Mr. Trump, and I really think that with the Justice Department, it's too bad Jeff Sessions recused himself, because I think an attorney general would say, look, you got to tell the country whether you found anything about Trump's campaign colluding, and what your original assignment is finding out who did the hacking and the rest of it. And if he didn't do it, stand up and say we have no evidence he did it.
What about all these guys in the deep state that we have discovered that literally exonerated Hillary before they investigated Hillary? What about what we know about James?
The IG report's going to come out on that, isn't it, John? Look, I'm astounded at, what they've found out already, and I think those fellas are really in some kind of trouble. And the IG's report, isn't that the thing that's supposed to deal with this whole problem?
Yep, we're expecting it, any week now. All right, Pat Buchanan, thank you, sir.